Welcome to another Harry's Hobbies video where I'm working on the Wallace building for the Marshall's Boat and Gas Diorama. And in front of me I've got the building, and what I'm going to show you in another video is how to install the LED. And I use the Pico LEDs, which I have one right here. They're very tiny, they put out a lot of light. And the first thing I do is I take a battery, and in this case it's one of my old Black & Decker portable batteries, and we test them to make sure that they're going to work simply by plugging into the positive side, and of course the other one obviously is the negative side, just to make sure that it's going to work. And you should see it light up, and there we have the light, and this one works. So I want to place this into the building where this is going to be the front of the building, the stucco part with the large doors, but you don't want the light to be direct into and showing through this way. So I'm going to install this on the back side. And I start by simply taking a piece of scrap wood, and I use hot glue to place the light into place initially. So we hold the light, and we take just a little bit of hot glue and put it onto the piece of wood. And then we put the LED into place right onto the hot glue. I've got this set on low temperature, and so that it won't affect the light itself. And just to make sure, before we go any further, we'll test that again. And again, we simply use the positive side and the negative. As soon as I can get a grip on the negative piece. Come on, you little booger. And we just test that light and make sure it's still going to operate. As you can see, even on the hot glue, even after it's been glued on, it does still work. There we go. Come on. There it is. This wire is very, very fine, and sometimes it's hard to get a really good connection with the loose, as light as that wire is. And there we go. The light is still working on the, after being placed into the hot glue on the piece of wood. So we know we're good to go there. So what I then do is I add a little more hot glue on the back side of the wire. And this is just to help hold it in place a little better, a little firmer, and I spread that out so that it holds it down. And that's now in place where I want it to go. And since this is going on this part on the back side, it's going to go right in here. And I'm actually going to place this between these two windows so that it actually shines towards the back and provides more ambient light towards the front of the building. And from here, want to make sure you get the little spider webs of hot glue off as much as you can. And then we're going to take our, once again, I'm using Gorilla Glue. And we're just going to take a little bit of that Gorilla Glue and place it onto the back of our piece of wood. Doesn't take much to hold this in place. And then we're going to place this onto the area inside the building. And we'll let that set up. And then we have our LED mounted. And I know it's not that pretty, but it's going to work. And again, I'll get some close-up photos of this for you all, where you can see it a little bit better. And the next step would be to run a few wires. And this is a pretty simple step. I just use some Cat 5 cable that I've trimmed out. And I actually mark these underneath the diorama itself for red and black, but for now they're always a little bit longer, and you want that length because you can cut it after the installation. You don't want to be too short. And we just strip these back. Like so. Now, I do not have a soldering gun or soldering iron. I do have a soldering iron, but unfortunately it's not that great anymore. And I haven't gotten a new one yet. So in the interim, what I do, I just use electrician's tape. And I place the wires and fold it over, and then I fold it back again, and then I just take a small piece of electrical tape and tape that into place. And then I take the positive. I always use the solid color for the negative and the stripe color for the positive. Then I do the same with the other one. Just simply twist it on. I would prefer to use solder or those heat shrink type of connections. But since I don't have them available, this will have to do. And then I tape this next to the other one. And then once again, I'll strip the other end of the cable, or actually the wire, because this isn't really a cable. I'm just used to calling them cables because I did installations for so long. We get that stripped off, and then, yes, that's right, we test it again. I can't stress this enough. To test, and retest. Anytime you mess with the LED, you want to check it and make sure that it's still going to work. And there we have the light working. It is operational. So we know that's good so far. So since that's good, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run another piece of tape just to hold things in place a little bit better. So that we don't have issues down the road. And then what I like to do is I like to try to get all of the fine wire inside the building as much as I can. And that helps facilitate not only when you're building the rest of the model, but it also keeps you from snagging these thin wires and possibly breaking them. So it can get a little tricky sometimes to do this, but it's usually not that big of an issue. Okay, so get those a little bit out of the way. And then on the far side over here, I'm just going to take some hot glue and place this part that I've just taped up against the supporting brace that I put down to help keep this from warping. You probably remember that from an earlier video. And we get that into place and hold it there. And since it's low temperature, you're not really going to burn up your fingers too bad. I mean, it does get a little warm, but it's not that bad. And then from there, we'll just straighten things up and get other things tacked down into place so that they're not shining through the windows and things like that. And that's not hard to do. So, but I'll follow up this and we'll continue on with the construction. Usually I do this after the roof is in place, but I wanted to get some clear shots of the LED after it had been installed. So that's why I did this a little bit earlier before the roof assembly went on. So that's it for the LED install.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Well, it's a little bit later. And what I've done is on the LEDs for the Wallace building, I've taken hot glue and placed the small kind of fragile wires in place inside the building, and they run out with this wire. And since I messed around with the wires, we always do this. We test, and retest. Whenever you mess around with the wires or do something close to the wires, test to make sure that LED is going to work right. As you can see in this case, I can get it to flash a little bit for you. And you can see that that's in working condition. And it's right up here at the front of the building where it shines backwards. So now what I'm going to show you is I'm going to add the roof. And you can see I've painted the interior of this all black to help seal off any any light leakage. So I need to add this part of the roof, which with this particular model kit, this is simply a piece of lightweight cardboard, which is fine. It serves its purpose. I've got no complaints about that at all. And then once again, we'll be using the Gorilla Glue as our adhesive to hold this roof in place. But after I get this on, I'll also be doing something else. But what we do initially is run a bead of glue along the edges where the roof is going to sit. And I'm only putting glue on 3 edges, and there's a reason for that. Now I'll get to that in a minute. And that's because this piece of the roof will sit right on the edge of this, and I'll be sealing that in with some hot glue set on low temp setting. Then we take the roof part and we get it to go into place like so. And I hold that there for a few seconds while the glue sets up a little bit. Which usually doesn't take too long in this case, since this is paper just going onto wood. Now on the other side, once again, I'm back to using the hot glue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a bead of hot glue right around the edges where this roof connects to the building structure itself. And this is done, again, to help avoid any light seepage through the areas. And this is on a low temperature setting, so it's not very hot. And this also helps to hold the roof piece into place as well. Replace the glue stick. Thank goodness these things are cheap. And I just place a bead all the way around the interior edges. And this doesn't have an effect on the Gorilla Glue. This is just simply to cover up any gaps where any light could seep through. Now, while that's drying, and again, I'll do another test because I was messing around with the wires for the LED. And you do not want to get into a situation where you've got to tear apart 2/3 of a model just to replace one light. So that's the reason that I habitually test, and I stress that over and over. And again, it's still working, so we don't have a problem. I have run into situations where, no, it didn't work, and I've had to just take out what I've done, like in this case, and replace it with a different light. But thus far, it's coming along pretty good. Now, this glue, the hot glue, will set up pretty quick. So what I'll do in the meantime is, and this is the little trick that I've learned to keep that light from oozing out like on the walls of the building. I just take a paintbrush, black paint, get some on your little paint palette. Unfortunately, this is where neatness is not an issue when it comes to painting. So you just go along where that hot glue is and cover up the hot glue in black. And we go all the way around the interior. And this is one of those steps that I usually have done before I install the LED. I've usually got the roof installed before the LED goes in. But because I wanted to show everyone how that LED went in, I didn't do it this time. So I'm kind of doing things in a little different order than I personally usually go. Your own route, how to go about doing this in your own way. I'll make sure I get all the hot glue covered up with black paint. And if you miss a little bit, it's not that big of a deal to just go back and give it a quick touch after the paint dries. And we clean the brush off. And again, since I was messing around with the light again, we do another test just to make sure. I know this sounds a little bit redundant, but again, better safe than sorry. And yes, we still have a working LED. And next up, I'll shoot some pictures of this close up and get those posted so you can see exactly what I've done on the inside. And that's it for the video part. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.